And we continue to follow the news of the death of Congressman David Scott. If you've been following along through this afternoon, this news broke just a few hours ago. A titan of Georgia politics, serving in public service for decades, currently running for his 13th term in the United States House of Representatives. Congressman David Scott died today, April 22nd. And just in the last few moments, we've gotten a new statement from the congressman's office. I want to read it to you in full right now. This is what they say, his staff. It is with great, deep sorrow that we share the unexpected passing of Congressman David Scott, representative of Georgia's 13th Congressional District. Official communications will be shared by the congressman's staff in the coming days. To the public, he was a devoted leader who spent more than 50 years serving his community, the state of Georgia, and the American people. Beyond his public services, he was a devoted father, grandfather, husband, and friend. He will be remembered not only for his leadership, but for his kindness, compassion, and enduring impact on those around him. We are grateful for the outpouring of prayers, love, and support. We respectfully ask that the family and his staff be afforded privacy as they grieve this incredibly difficult time. That again, the statement just released by Congressman David Scott's staff on the news of his unexpected death. Governor Brian Kemp and a slew of other major Georgia politicians, Republican and Democratic alike, have all weighed in and expressed their condolences to the congressman and his family and loved ones. This is what Governor Brian Kemp had to say earlier today, just moments after the news of the congressman's death had been made public.
There's been an awful lot going on today. I want to start by offering our condolences to the family and friends of U.S. Representative David Scott, who passed away just a little while ago. Congressman Scott has served our state for many years. He was a champion for so many communities, especially our agriculture industry, and his impact will be felt for years, and our prayers are with him and his loved ones at this time.
And we want to bring in right now Democratic strategist Fred Hicks, who is joining us live to discuss more the legacy and the life of Congressman David Scott. Fred, thanks so much for being with us, as always, but particularly on this tough day.
Well, thank you for having me, and this is indeed a tough day and a sad day for all Georgians. As the governor mentioned, Representative Scott served Georgia honorably for many decades and was a legacy and a lion in his advocacy for the agricultural industry, which is Georgia's original industry and really our main industry.
And Fred, situate us in history here for those who did not get to see the full arc of his 5 decades of service. What do people need to know about Congressman Scott? How will he be remembered?
Well, I think he'll be remembered as a true public servant, particularly for the metropolitan region and for the Southern Crescent region, that is the area south of Fulton County, Clayton, Henry, Fayette, and even going over to Newton County, areas that he represented in the State House and also in the Congress. So people forget that David Scott was one of those politicians, elected leaders who worked his way through the ranks from the General Assembly and then to Congress, and up to at one point when Democrats were in charge, serving as the chair of the Agricultural Committee, where he certainly advocated for Georgia and Georgia farmers and helped bring a lot back to the state. So he was a career servant. He was a statesman. He was one who did not always vote with his party. And he was one who was not afraid to reach across the aisle because he thought it was the right thing to do when he thought it was the right thing to do so. So he has a really strong legacy, and his shadow will be long and will stretch across many generations, as the governor said.
Anytime you spend that much time in the public eye, 5 decades, 50 years in the case of Congressman Scott, particularly when you're in a role like he was in, whether he was under the Gold Dome here at the state capitol in Georgia or under the Capitol Dome, the United States Congress, you are in so many ways at the epicenter of so much change culturally, society, politically. Fred, how much change did the congressman see in all those years he was a player in the evolutions of our state, our city, our region, and our country?
Oh, absolutely. Zach, if you think back 50 years ago where Georgia was in 1976, 1976, we were dealing with issues like school busing, desegregation, integration. We were dealing with the struggle and change in power with respect to how and who made the decisions in Georgia. And then you also think about Georgia at the time was a purely Democratic state, although it was led by what we would consider Dixiecrats. And David Scott was there through that. He was also in service through the early 2000s when Republicans like Sonny Perdue um, moved back into power for the first time since Reconstruction. And so he's seen everything, the full arc of Georgia, from its struggles again in the civil rights movement and the integration period of the state to Georgia becoming an economic power. And for me personally, Zach, I first met him back in 2010 when I ran the campaign to bring. It was a non-binding campaign at the time to bring transit back to Clayton County because at the time the county commission voted to end what we call C-Tran, and he was a big advocate for transportation. He worked with us to help us get that passed, which paved the way in 2014 for a binding referendum to bring MARTA to Clayton County, and something that was desperately needed for a county and a community that was really struggling without having any sort of connectivity to the greater Atlanta metropolitan region. And so that's one of the things I remember about him personally is that he was very accessible and he cared about the communities that I care about in terms of the geographic areas. And he got it. He got it in so many respects and worked really hard for his district and for the state. And that's really something that I think will be missed. We're in a day and time right now where it's not cool to reach across the aisle and to engage in bipartisanship. It seems like a quaint notion. But David Scott was someone who embraced that, sometimes to the chagrin and angering of his own party. But he was elected time and time and time and time again, who said that his constituents understood his value and recognized what he brought back to the district.
You talk about that bipartisanship and the congressman's willingness to, at times, buck his party and go a different direction when he felt it was the right thing to do. Is he an emblem of a generation of politicians who view politics in that lens that maybe is becoming rarer and rarer now?
But for sure, and he is also part of the Georgia delegation that is slowly passing away. We saw Congressman John Lewis, who's sort of the conscience of the Congress, pass away in 2020. But and people don't think about John Lewis and David Scott as contemporaries, but they really were. You think about 50 years again. That was a time before John Lewis really began his public service on the Atlanta City Council and then Congress. David Scott was active already on the scene there and advocating and moving things forward. And so they were colleagues or contemporaries. Now both of them are gone, and it's going to be interesting to see who picks up that mantle, not just in terms of who wins the election for his seat and the special that will eventually be called, but who is willing to continue on that legacy, if anyone is willing to continue on that legacy of reaching across the aisle when and where they feel appropriate, and really putting Georgia and Georgians first, which is what he did.
I want to ask you about the electoral and the political ramifications in a moment, but before we do turn to that, I want to spend another moment on his legacy and his time in Congress. So many folks who knew him and knew of his work, who were also in politics themselves, just like you have pointed to his real emphasis on agricultural policy as a particular focal point for the congressman. Talk a little bit more about that. What tangible impact will farmers of our state remember Congressman Scott for having?
Listen, he was a tremendous advocate for farmers. Again, as I mentioned, agriculture is really Georgia's oldest industry and still is our legacy and probably our strongest one, even though we have other things coming on the scene now, like the energy and data centers and those other kinds of sort of emergent technologies and emergent industries. But at its core, Georgia is an agricultural state. There's way more of the state that's not Atlanta or Savannah or Macon than the state that is that. And so farmers knew that they could rely on him, whether they were Democrat or Republican. He was going to advocate for subsidies. He was going to advocate for the Farm Bureau. He was going to advocate for the export of Georgia's goods to the global marketplace and doing his best to make sure that Georgia farmers were at a competitive advantage. And so when you talk about not just having the ability or having the resources to manage your farm, manage your agricultural business, but also having markets to sell your goods, David Scott was really at the forefront of that and making sure that Georgians, if you're in the agriculture industry, wherever you are, and again, regardless of your political affiliation, that he did his best to make sure that you were successful in that, because a successful farmer in Georgia really makes for a successful state.
And of course, we do now need to talk about the political impact here, Fred, because there is that element of this conversation as well that's impossible to ignore, and we're going to do it with respect and delicacy and certainly understanding for the family and the loved ones of Congressman Scott. But he was also in the midst of a re-election campaign himself right now, and he was facing opposition. He is an incumbent Democrat. He was running, I believe, for his 13th term in Congress, and he faced a number of prominent fellow Democrats who were challenging him for his seat. What happens to this race now?
Well, Zach, I think it's important to note that Congressman Scott has been challenged, probably the last 4 or 5 times he was up for re-election, and he won without a runoff. So he was a very strong candidate. And so this conversation, to the family and to the office staff is in no way, I think, disrespectful to him. In fact, it's an acknowledgement of just how good he was on the trail and how much voters thought about him whatever his district looked like, whether it included Cobb County or Gwinnett County or the Southern Crescent or whatnot. But in terms of this, I think that, well, it's important for voters to know that the qualifying for the seat already took place. And so his name will still, and voting starts on Monday, the ballots have already been printed. So his name will still appear on the ballot, but the votes that are cast for him will not count. And so in a field of several different candidates, the most recent polling indicated that State Representative Jasper Clark was the closest runner-up to him. And so without the congressman being in this race, so when his vote's not counting, this really opens this field up to the possibility of maybe winning without a runoff, which is something we talk about in the Georgia votes, where we talk about the other races. But looking at this race now, if Representative Clark is able to consolidate support, keep this in mind, this is a 6-county district, so it goes from Clayton, Henry, DeKalb, Rockdale, Newton, and Southern Gwinnett County, and a lot of the elected officials, a lot of the money in the race on the ground in the district really did not support any of the challengers out of respect for Congressman Scott's 5 decades of service. With him no longer being there, I imagine that in the next 24 hours there will be a mad dash from the front runners to try to consolidate support. And again, if you're one of the ones, say like Representative Clark, who has a lot of resources, who's been up on air heavily in the last 2 weeks, I think that she will try to make a move to consolidate as much support as possible and to win without a runoff. And if you're one of the several other candidates at this point, you're just trying to get into a runoff so that you can see that if you can have a chance to win. That's one side. The other part about this is that there will be a special election at some point. The governor will decide when that is. It could be in June. It could be in November. So it could be at some point in time in the year. And so candidates who are running right now for the seat will have an opportunity, as well as other people, will have an opportunity to run for that special election. Special elections are nonpartisan, and so I suspect that we'll see a Republican or two get into that special election to try to win that to finish out the term. But this is one other thing, Zach, I want to keep in mind. Again, this is not any disrespect to the congressman's family, but national politics has a real opportunity to play a part in what happens right now. The governor, from my understanding, could call the election at any point. If you call it in June, he could call it later in the year. And I imagine that given the thin margins in the House right now, Republicans will not want to see this seat filled if they can help it, because that gives them one more seat, one more vote that they do not have to worry about when they're trying to negotiate things, whether you're talking about the war powers in Iran, or you're talking about the whole healthcare subsidies should that come back up, or any of the other number of issues that a very divided and polarized Congress is facing right now. So we'll stay tuned. As we go through the grieving period, I think that national politics will quickly emerge as a topic that we discuss here on air and in political circles.
And that is, of course, a question that is still a very fresh one, and one that we do not know an answer to at that point. As you point out, it's up to the governor to set that special election date whenever it may be. So we, of course, will be watching to see when that is scheduled. And Fred, too, there's a big field of candidates just in the primary, the general primary ballot. We'd suspect that it will be similar situation for the special election whenever that is set. What are the odds of both of these races going to a runoff?
So the odds are still greater than not that that both will go to a runoff. But again, I think what we're already starting to see in this election before Congressman Scott passed is that the field had really narrowed. You had Congressman Scott as the incumbent, who in the polling was doing very well. Again, Representative Clark put out a lot of polling here in the last week or two that showed that she was in a strong second place, not in first place, but it was really a two-person race. And then, of course, you also have a few other people like former school board chair Everton Blair over there, and you have Emmanuel Jones, who's a state senator who's running from Henry County. And just important to note that when you look at where the votes are across the 6 counties in this district, it's really Clayton County and Gwinnett County that make up the bulk of the votes, and a little bit in DeKalb. But someone like Senator Jones, if he can put together a strong campaign here down the stretch, again, voting starts on Monday in the regular election. If he can pull Clayton and Henry and a little bit of DeKalb, he could force a runoff. But again, if you're Representative Clark and if her polling is accurate, which it seems like it is, and she's been very active on TV and all of that, she could have an opportunity to do it. Again, Congressman Scott, in my estimation, was going to get at least 35% of the vote, perhaps 45%. And so all of those votes are up for grabs now. And that's a significant share that could go to someone and tilt this very easily into the space of not being a runoff. So whoever was running second, which again, polling seems to be that it was Representative Clark, is in a strong position to win this without a runoff. Now the special, be a different ballgame, and I think that it'll be interesting because again, the people who filed to run in this seat already, they can file to run in that special election, and so someone might determine, well, if I'm sitting in third or fourth, and or in one of the third tier candidates, that maybe at that point, what I do is I decide to look at the special election so I can at least have some time in Congress, and before I move on with the rest of my life. So there are a lot of strategic decisions, a lot of conversations. My phone has been it's been going nonstop since the news broke, and people are having a lot of conversations and making decisions right now with respect to what they want to do. But everyone, of course, and I do want to say this, is taking this day, taking this time to pause and reflect and to show deference and respect to Congressman for his legacy and to the staff and team for the work that they've done for the district and the state.
The day that marks the passing of a stalwart of Georgia politics, Congressman David Scott, died today, April 22nd. Fred Hicks, a Democratic strategist, joining us with his perspective. Fred, thank you as always. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Zach. And again, blessings and condolences to the family.